purpose of Freethought Forum is to be vigilant to the encroachment of religion into government and to educate the general public as to what a freethinker is.
My thoughts give me power. No scholar can map them. No hunter can trap them.
And welcome to Freethought Forum. Today we will discuss minorities and who they are and who they are not, and I will talk about faith-based organizations and the religious right that is dominating the United States Constitution and corrupting the law of separation of church and state guaranteed in the Constitution. Now this sounds pretty serious, and I don't want to scare you awake because we're going to have a little fun at the end as well. I'm Terrellita Maverick, and I want to express my gratitude to Catherine Fahringer. She's had this show for 12 years, and to Sally Chizek. They have helped me so much and given me the courage to continue to believe in what I believe and express myself. I belong to the biggest minority in the world because I am white. We are 15% of the world, and I'm a woman, and I belong to the most maligned and disrespected minority in the world because I do not believe in your God. Now, on a broader side, I am a good mother, a great grandma, a loving grandmother, and a great grandma as well. And I was a teacher and a video producer and a camera woman. So today, in the last 10 minutes of this half-hour segment, I will show you some video of my work back at a Martin Luther King Day event, January 1987. Were you there? I was there. So please, if you are a minority and you love Rosa Parks, like I do, put a tape in your VCR right now. You don't have to press record for a while yet, because I'm going to say some things that might make you mad, but I definitely want you to call your friends because Lunell Sutton, looking beautiful, is there, and the lady whose name I wish I knew, in a faux leopard cloche. And what will we do until that time? Well, first I want to answer a letter written to me. Every time I talk, somebody writes me letters and asks me questions. And she said, "What do you mean when you say that the Old Testament was anti-feminist?" And I thought, anti-feminist? Well, that's appropriate because this is, I believe, Women's Month. And I want to share with you what are the, and then after that, I will share with you what some of the bad bills in the Texas legislature. But first, the Old Testament. Is it anti-feminist? The Old Testament swims in savagely anti-feminist passages. From Genesis to Zechariah. Genesis, we read, a wealthy man says to some guys that came for dinner, "Behold now, I have 2 daughters, which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them unto you, and you do to them as is good in your eyes, only don't fool with my sons." Don't touch the boys. In Exodus, it reads, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." Just kill her. And I have read enough United States history to know that thousands of women and persons were killed, mostly women were killed, in the 1600s and 1700s. My ancestors were there. They kept their memoirs too. And these women were assassinated or murdered. Now in Deuteronomy, where brides are not virgin on their wedding night, they are stoned to death at their father's doorstep. Oh, I could go on, but let's end with Zechariah. "And the city shall be taken and the women ravished." And the point is that Jesus never refuted these passages. Not once. Oh, let's go to something that's near and dear to my heart, politics. I'm so happy that I can talk about something that I know a little bit about, and loving politics as I do, and not feeling free to talk about it anytime I want to, especially at Toastmasters, to which I belong. So thank you again for this opportunity. One of the worst bills in the legislature is House Bill 2666. It was entered by Mike Crucy of Round Rock, and this will create a statewide private school voucher program. You've all heard about vouchers. It will require all school districts in Texas to participate in a voucher program. And this is in anticipation of them passing a voucher program in the United States Senate and Congress. The cost of this Texas state local voucher program is inestimable, but undoubtedly it will take millions of your tax dollars away from an already cash-strapped neighborhood public school. After a child establishes their eligibility for a voucher, he can attend this private school with tuition paid by local, state, and federal taxes, all of the taxes you pay, as long as this child receives this federally voucher. The bill does not stipulate any, this is what really knocks me down. The bill does not stipulate any state regulation or financial accountability. No required TOS tests or other assessment of the student, and no regulation of the school admission policies or procedure, no requirements regarding transportation and free lunches. And I know plenty of kids that get free lunches because there's at a poverty level in the private schools. House Bill 266 would impose an unfunded mandate on local school districts requiring local school tax funds to be spent to pay for private school tuition. Now here's another one I don't like, entered by, of all people, Ron Wilson of Houston. This will affect the 6th largest, instead of affecting every single school district like Seguin or Paris, Texas, this will affect just the 6 largest school districts, including San Antonio. And this private school, a religious, well, they call them faith-based, will give preference in admissions to a student. They will give money to a student that's already enrolled, and to their brothers and sisters first if they so choose. Students eligible for vouchers are educationally disadvantaged. In other words, they couldn't pass the TOS test or anything else for that matter. And they are eligible to attend another public school in this district, and they have had a transfer application rejected by other school districts. And when this child establishes that they want a voucher, he or she can continue to attend, get this folks, until they're 21 years old. Your tax dollar. I can just see my grandchild now going into one of these classrooms filled with crosses and Jesus bleeding there with a crown of thorns. And that's education. I'm starting to say I pray not. There is another, let's see, there's another bill. Oh, it is another bad bill. House Bill 2825, exempting faith-based child care from licensing. These are all right now going on in the Texas legislature, exempting all of these schools from state licensing and regulation. It's called the Alternative Accreditation. Oh well, let's call it the TACCCA, TACA. Very tacky, but they're TACA. Do you know what this allows them to do now in Texas? It will allow the roll-off, ROLOFF, homes to come back to Texas. In fact, in 1999, I'm so mad. Governor Bush invited them to come back after they had to leave Texas for all the child abuses. These people, these roll-off homes became a celebrated cause among the religious right, dominating the right-wing radio and leading fundamentalist ministers to chain themselves to the doors of the Texas Supreme Court. And when it didn't work, they appealed to the United States Supreme Court that ruled that the homes had to be licensed or closed down. So what did they do? They went to Missouri. But now, at the invitation of Governor Bush in 1999, they're back. And in 2000, it was, I can't tell you about these, it's too dreary and too strange. In 2001, we're talking about now. Physical abuse allegations at the roll-off homes, Lighthouse Home for the adults, are still pending. And these homes, these phones, they appealed. And right now they're still here, but they have appealed, but they're still here. Here are some figures. Here are some figures for you. Ooh, I thought they were here. Yes. Of the state licensed facilities, roughly 1 in 100 state licensed facilities have had abuse cases filed. 1 in 100. In the faith-based child facilities accredited through TACA, it's 1 in 8. And that's all justified by the spare the rod and spoil the child and just beat the daylights out of the children because it is justified in the Bible. Isn't that fine? Oh, I got good news. I got good news for you. There is a good bill by James Byrd Jr., Hate Crimes Act Bill, House Bill 587, Senate Bill 87. Now, I know you're not going to remember all this, but I will tell you how you can, if you ever need to make a speech, or if you're a student and you have to write a theme, or you can call 512-AUSTIN or ask information for the Texas Freedom Network. I have their number here, but I'm not going to tell you because it's much simpler just to call 411 and ask for the Texas Freedom Network. And you tell them what subject you're interested in, and they will fax or they will send you anything you want to know. They're a wonderful organization and I support them, and I hope you will too, or use them. Just call them on the phone and say, you know, I want to know more about, would you be kind enough to say, sure, and they'll send it to you. So now here's a good bill. James Byrd's Act takes a comprehensive approach to the problem of hate-related violence and crime, and it will enhance criminal penalties for all crimes motivated by prejudice and bias. All crimes. And several other parts of the bill are absolutely marvelous. And finally, pay and establish a prosecutor in the Attorney General's office as a hate crimes director. Excuse me. Now, I believe that hate crimes are among the most feared in America because they are random. And they target innocent victims simply because of their color or what club they belong to. They might belong to the Freethinkers, for instance. The Freethinkers, of which I'm a member, we put a beautiful rock and a monument in Comfort, Texas. And it got around, and we did it to honor the men of the Civil War who were massacred. It got around that we said they were not religious. They found out that some of us were atheists. Well, they began to call the rock the Devil's Rock. And then they called it Satan's Rock. And they passed around a petition in Comfort, Texas. And lo and behold, December the 22nd, last year, the rock all of a sudden disappeared. They got a 100-ton crane to move this 32-ton rock and move it 3 miles out of town, and there it lies on its side. And I'm the only one that thinks this, that it is a form of hate to do this to us because we are not the Christians that they are. We were honoring Civil War heroes who did not believe in slavery. There are nearly, I think, 50% of the reported incidents, however, are against African American, not us white, agnostic, humanists, atheists, and that's really very serious. They asked me another question, why is America so religious? Well, one clear difference between America and other nations is because we have a constitution that protects religion by separating religion from the state. And if it hadn't been for all those religious nuts back in the 1600s and early 1700s, it probably wouldn't have even written the Constitution. It was because of them and their state religion and trying to control everybody. My family had to leave, wanted to leave, and no wonder that we moved south to the plantations and to the Barbados, because of those nuts. And that's why we have an America today, because we have a constitution that separates us from those people. Oh, I sound so mad. I'm not mad because I really want to brag a little bit now, because in just a few minutes, we're going to get to see the Martin Luther King event in 1987. And you will see people you haven't seen in a long time. Mario Salas, I could not believe him. He looked so handsome, had a mustachio, and Lunell Sutton. But please turn on your VCR right now, if you've got a tape in there, and punch record. You will love this. And this tape is about 30 minutes long, but no, this will only be for 10 minutes. And someday I'll produce a special, and you can see the whole thing, and you will love it. And this is all about minorities, and I want you to respect who I am because I respect who you are. And so let's roll the tape.
I can't tell you how blessed we are to have Mrs. Rosa Parks. I'm Bill Roberts, who is the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church. That was the church where Martin Luther King Sr. was the pastor, and Martin Luther King Jr. was the co-pastor. Was here last night in San Antonio. Spoke at Second Baptist Church. He said the civil rights movement had to have a motor, and the motor was Dr. Martin Luther King. But a motor has to have an ignition, and the ignition was Rosa Parks. For 100 years, for at least 60 years since the end of the Civil War, people that lived, particularly in the South, and yes, in Texas and in San Antonio, who were black, with no protections under the law, subhuman circumstances. And then one day in 1955, December the 1st, a seamstress, a lady who worked at a downtown department store in Montgomery, Alabama, usually caught a particular bus, but for the last few months had not taken that bus, because before she had a run-in with a bus driver. He had forced her to get off of the bus and grabbed her by the arm and her coat and taken her off the bus. And she said, well, I don't want to create an incident, so I won't get back on that bus. But this day, December the 1st, it was cold. And she didn't want to wait for that bus to pass and wait for the next one, so she got on that bus. She got on that bus and there was an empty seat. And she sat down near the front of the bus. They used to call it the neutral zone. Black people couldn't sit in the front of the bus. They had to stay in the back of the bus, or what was called the neutral zone. So she sat in the neutral zone. After a while, and some other black people, 3 others, sat with her. After a while, the bus started to get crowded. White people started to crowd the front of the bus. And a man stood by, hanging on to the pole, and the other black people got up knowing that the custom was they had to get up and they had to go to the back of the bus. She was so tired, and she was so cold, that instead of getting up and leaving her seat, she just scooted over one seat. And he could sit right there. There was a seat for a white man to sit down. But no, that wasn't good enough for the bus driver. He said, get up. Give this man the seat. She said, please, sir, I am tired. I am cold. He said, get up. She said, I'm not going to get up. This was a 42-year-old lady who had no weapon. She was defenseless. She was a seamstress, and also she was afraid. Because she said she had seen in her lifetime black people be hurt, be maimed, be killed, be lynched for doing things like that. And she was afraid. And so indeed she was arrested, and she was taken down to the court, and she was fined, despite her defense, she was fined for refusing to give up her seat on the bus. One of the people she enlisted in her effort was the pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, who was to become known to our country as one of its heroes of this century and of all time, Pastor Martin Luther King, who took up her cause. From there came the boycotts. From there came the marches. From there came the peaceful revolution that we have witnessed in America. And it started with one brave, cold, tired lady who said, no more, I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to give up the seat. And I say, we are blessed beyond words that when 200 cities across the country today celebrate this day, it is in San Antonio, Texas, that we have this saint, Rosa Parks. I think it's appropriate that as far as I can see right now, I see faces and people who have marched 3 miles here today. I think it's appropriate that this crowd is made up of white faces and brown faces and black faces and old faces and young faces. I think it's appropriate that the schools would be off today and the city would be closed and the county would be closed. And I'll tell you why I think it's appropriate. Because more than most cities in this United States, San Antonio has benefited from what Dr. Martin Luther King did. Martin Luther King was marching and leading. In San Antonio, since those years, we've changed the system of elections. In San Antonio, since those years, we've had councilmen who represent this area. Dr. Sam James, the first black councilman of the city of San Antonio. Please stand. The present city councilman from this area, Reverend Joe Webb. Reverend Joe Webb, please stand. From this district, the first black state representative since Reconstruction in D.J. Sutton, and his widow continues to hold that seat. Mr. Sutton, please stand with me. I'm telling you, San Antonio has been touched more than most cities by change. None of those things would have been possible. Could you imagine, even 15 years ago, that the chairman of the city water board would be Dr. Robert Hilliard and the chairman of the city public service board would be Mr. Earl Hill? Who would have imagined two black men chairing both of those in San Antonio? Who would imagine that that was possible 30 years ago, 25 years ago, when on the Alamo Plaza there were water fountains, some that said whites only and some that said colored, in Alamo Plaza of San Antonio, Texas. Who would imagine that that would have been possible? Some of you in this audience will remember the days when if you wanted to go to the Majestic Theater, you could not go in from Houston Street. The revolution of peace and nonviolence, because Dr. King made it so. That's what he deemed it to be. That's what he said it would be. Oh, but that Dr. King could look down at this moment and see what he wrought in San Antonio, Texas. The immensity of change. Dr. King, if he had lived, would be 58 years old today. And I have heard talk about what he would be doing if he were alive today. He was offered the opportunity once to pastor one of the most distinguished churches in America, the Riverside Church in New York City. Direction in America would be different today than what we live in. That might be. I know Dr. King, if he were 58, would have liked to see his children grow up. I have seen pictures of them. They're fine young people. He would have liked to take a grandchild and bounce a grandchild on his knee and enjoy a day like today, but it was not to be. It was not to be. It was not to be because there's something about this human race that takes those who are the geniuses, those who are the leaders, those who want to make change, and takes them away from us. There's something about the human race. John Kennedy, who awakened us after all those years of sleep, was taken from us by bloodshed. Abraham Lincoln, who freed the slaves and goes down in history as perhaps our greatest president, was taken from us. Even the great Redeemer, whose faith we all follow, Jesus Christ, shed blood so that the rest of us could live. And so it was with Dr. King. Dr. King was cut down brutally in Memphis that day. That he envisioned, a freedom that he saw, a freedom that he dreamed that no one else could understand. To be vigilant and true and safeguard those freedoms that he did die for. I think he would say to us today, tell me, what kind of freedom is it when old people have to cower in their houses because they're afraid of walking outside because there's crime out on the streets? What kind of freedom is that? What kind of freedom is it that young people have when they cannot go to college because the schools aren't teaching them what they need to be learning and they drop out of school? What kind of freedom is that? What kind of freedom is it when we have homeless people walking around on the streets of our city? I'll show you to them today in downtown San Antonio. What kind of freedom is it when the young people have to hang out in dens of dope and junkie heaven, shooting up with dope because they don't have the guidance in the recreation centers and the touch of the adult, the counselor, the parent to lead them along the way? What kind of freedom have we bought, Dr. King, with your death if the rest of us don't be attentive to the true meaning of it? Dr. King didn't ask us to die or to give up our lives or to shed blood. But I think he would ask us today to give a little bit of our time, to give a little bit of our energy.